Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, find out how hackers robbed a bank for nearly $6 million over the internet, Zappos' massive security breach, and the fall of the koobface botnet. Plus, we'll look back at the web's SOPA protest and see where things stand. All that and so much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP, Jupiter Broadcasting Systems Network and an administration podcast. This is episode 41, and we streamed it live on January 19th for release Friday morning, January 20th, 2012. This episode is brought to you by GoDaddy.com, and I'll tell you more about them as the show goes on. And the live stream is provided by ScaleEngine.com, which is awesome. You got to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us like every single week is the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, man, welcome. Now, this is, I got to warn everybody, this might be a little wonky. If you see something where there's like a quick cut or something like that during the show, I probably lost power. I mean, it is like, here in Washington, it is like the 2012 snow apocalypse. If you're watching the video version here, I'm playing a clip of my backyard, which probably has like 200 feet of snow in it. Not really, but it is so much snow, though I actually lost power once already this morning, so I wouldn't be too surprised if we lost it again. But we got a massive show today, Alan.
You see, in Canada, snow can't interrupt the power. Ice can cause problems.
Yeah.
But snow is just snow. What's it going to do?
What happens is sometimes, we have those big evergreens and they get really heavy and then they fall on the power lines. But we also this morning started getting ice rain.
Ah, yes.
So
freezing rain will take out your, totally mess everything up.
Now, because we have so much news to cover this week, we actually decided to bump the feedback segment. And I know a lot of you love the feedback segment, but that gives you a chance to send your questions in to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com. If you've got a systems network administration question or want to know how something works, have something maybe you think that's kind of a beginner question, but it's just one of those things you missed out on, send those in too, TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com, and we'll probably be featuring some of your feedback next week. Unless the entire security world blows up again and we have so many things we have to cover. But hopefully, that tends to only happen once or twice a month. So hopefully we'll be okay. And it was a massive, massive week this week. So do you want to just jump right into it, Alan?
Yes.
All right. Well, our first story is about hackers stealing a ton of money in a bank cyber theft case.
Yes.
Wow.
So some criminals in South Africa managed to pull off a cyber bank heist.
This is something.
Yeah. So during the first 3 days of the new year, which are basically holidays in most places, right? Especially think it was over a weekend or something, wasn't it? Yeah. Because the holiday was on a Sunday, that means the day off gets bumped to the Monday, right? So that means like the first and the second, everybody was off. And so during that time, while the bank was closed and there was no one around, the thieves managed to access a compromised computer at the South African Post Bank, and then used that to transfer large sums of money from other accounts into accounts that they had opened during the previous few months. So this is a fairly sophisticated attack with lots of planning. So during November and December, they went around to a bunch of different branches and opened up accounts and collected all these account numbers. And then on the first, when everybody was away from the bank, they broke in through a computer they had managed to compromise with a Trojan and started filling these accounts they had opened with money from other people's accounts. Then they used the credentials they had compromised from a teller and a call center employee to raise the withdrawal limits on those accounts to astronomical numbers.
Clever.
So then, starting by 9 a.m. on January the 1st, they started sending money mules all over to different states and areas in South Africa to start withdrawing giant piles of money from ATMs. From these accounts.
That's pretty clever.
And because the withdrawal limits has been raised, they don't run into the normal safety net, right? Normally, your ATM card won't let you withdraw more than like $700 or $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever. But these banks had raised the hackers had raised the limit so high that they could just go from ATM to ATM, emptying them, basically.
You know, that is an interesting thing. Have you ever ran into that ATM card limit when you're out buying something or trying to withdraw some cash? And it just says, no, yeah, I have too. And I've been able to call the bank and they'll temporarily, I believe my bank increased it for 3 days and then it automatically defaulted back to the lower amount, which is okay by me because that's a pretty good protection.
Right. But they were not going to set the limit to, $50,000 either, right?
Right. I don't know, actually. Maybe. I don't think so.
Right?
That's a little much. I don't think I'm going to need...
Not without making you sign something.
I don't think... Hopefully, I don't need $50,000 when I'm walking into my local Best Buy. If I do, I got a whole nother problem.
Yeah. And then they stopped the withdrawals by 6 a.m. on January the 3rd before the bank reopened. So I don't know if their thought there was just to make it harder to get caught, or if they were just done with what they were doing. They were just tired after 3 days of emptying ATMs. Maybe
they figured, and this is probably rightly so, get while the going is good, right? Or whatever that saying is, yeah.
So in total, about 42 million South African rand were stolen, which by my math is approximately $5.3 million US. Although a couple of news stories listed the figure as $6.7 million. I don't know where that came from.
Well, it is a better headline.
Yes. Also, this appears to be about 1% of the entire holdings of the government-operated bank. They have, according to the news article, they have about $4 billion on deposit at that bank. And if 42 million of that was stolen, that's about 1%.
Wow. That's gonna they are gonna track these people down. I mean, you can mess with somebody's life, you can mess with a lot of things, but when you mess with somebody's money, they're gonna come for you.
Right. So the bank said that this won't affect any of their depositors' money because the bank will cover it. But also the National Intelligence Agency of South Africa is investigating because Postbank is a government institution, right? It's part of their post office. So now they have the National Intelligence Service investigating.
There you go. Yeah. It's going to get dirty.
Yeah. So sources also report that the bank's fraud detection system failed to detect the extremely large withdrawals.
You think?
And that the fraud was not discovered until employees returned to the bank after the holiday.
Interesting. I mean, so you have compromised teller accounts during a holiday.
So they had a teller's username and password and one from a call center employee. And then they had a computer where they had installed a Trojan. And from that computer, somehow they managed to get into some secure servers they weren't supposed to.
I mean, is it a Trojan or were these tellers in on it? Because I mean, maybe they just gave over their password.
Right. The Trojan was on the machine to allow them to remote control and get into the network. The investigators haven't determined yet whether it was, they just tricked an employee into running something, or if they just paid an employee to run something.
Oh, so they're looking into that.
Yeah. Observers of the compromise also question why such low-level employees, like a teller or a call center agent, have the access to be able to raise somebody's withdrawal limit that high.
It's got to be just for quick customer service. All right, get them on the phone and get them off.
Like, I understand, exactly. You said you call on the phone and you get the limit raised.
Yeah. Of course, I called into a call center. I didn't like call my local. I guess maybe people walk into the branch and ask.
Why they have they use the call center's agent's password. But, there probably should be a limit on how high the call center can raise your limit, right? On demand kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, $3,000 or $4,000, whatever, but not the entire value of your account or whatever. The investigators have not yet been able to determine if the computers and passwords that were compromised were, did they trick somebody, or did they compromise them in one way or another, or did they just, pay someone off to give them access? And I also have a link here to some local coverage from South Africa on top of the regular coverage from Reuters, I think it was.
The local stuff is always interesting. Sometimes you find a little more details because they get to actually go talk to the people.
Yeah.
It does seem kind of convenient, right? You have a bank holiday, you have a Trojan in just the right spot, you've got the password for just the right thing you need, and you're in and out, which sort of, shows that isn't a huge leap, but it also does show a little bit of understanding of how the bank works internally, knowing that they'd be coming in. And also the other curious piece is the bypassing of the fraud detection system. Well, that seems a little fishy too.
It seems their fraud detection system was just all for show. Anyway,
maybe so, yeah.
But yes, it does seem that the people that did this spent quite a bit of time researching and learning about the systems, and that they may have had some amount of insider knowledge on how the IT infrastructure was set up.
I mean, heck, it's worth it for $6 million. Yeah, I'd do my research too. I'll spend a month. You know what? If I can make $6 million, if I just spend a month researching, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Although I will never rob a bank. I promise. Now, do you want to move on to this other story? Because this is also pretty interesting. Now, it sounds like...
rather interesting as well, yes.
Yeah, there's a group that's kind of become well known for attempting to spread Facebook malware, but it looks like maybe the authorities have gotten down to the identities of who these people are. What's going on here?
Right. So there's the koobface. I don't know where that name comes from. Botnet that is based around Facebook. And basically what it is it targeted Facebook users and it prompted the users to download a newer version of Flash in order to play some video. Of course, the video doesn't actually exist. And, the last time you needed a newer version of Flash to play a video was like Flash 9 to play H.264. And that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You should always keep your Flash up to date, but you should get the new version of Flash authoritatively from the real website, not from some random website.
It's an interesting point. How easy would it be for a rogue website to just auto-detect that you're running an old version of Flash and suggest that you update, because it would be right.
You don't have to be running an old version for it to suggest you would update and user would fall for it.
Oh, that's true.
Especially with how often Flash updates.
Good point.
Right?
Yep.
And you're just like, oh, I just updated yesterday, but look, there's a newer update.
Totally, because that would be normal.
Yes.
You're right.
And so, it's encouraging people, if you need the newer version of Flash, you should go straight to adobe.com and get it yourself. Don't follow someone else's link to some site that looks like Adobe or some site that just sends you some executable to run.
Seriously. Huh.
So rather than a Flash update, the users would get malware and become part of a botnet. And then the malware operators made large sums of money by using that botnet of infected computers to do click fraud and other forms of malware profit.
Mm-hmm.
So through the use of pay-per-click and pay-per-install affiliate programs, koobface was able to earn over $2 million just between June of 2009 and June of 2010. And so it was still operating up until a couple of weeks ago. So they probably made even more money than that.
Wow.
And so basically, with the botneted computers, they would just force them to install malicious software.
Off of Facebook?
Yeah.
Wow. I got to ask.
Well, most of the money they made was from pay-per-install affiliate programs, which are apps that pay you for every person that you get to install this app.
Right. Facebook was just the launching point, the vector point.
It was just the vector. So a lot of it is, these programs that pay you to install them are mostly junk anyway, right?
Who is processing the money for these companies? I mean, really, who is taking the money from them and storing it in bank accounts? It seems like if you just find those companies and shut them down, these guys are pretty much, they're done because they're not making money. So what's the point?
Affiliate programs are legitimate. The affiliate programs are getting ripped off, right? Like, they could be using Google, right?
Right. They're just essentially victims too.
They're using 800,000 botnet or 800,000 computer botnet to click on the ads and make it look like legitimate click.
Sure, and you shut one down and they'll just use a different one.
Yeah. However, these guys were being pretty blatant about it. They, weren't covering their tracks very well. They were, spending their $2 million all over the place and living it up.
Party!
And so researchers had known who they were for quite a while. The researchers that had been investigating the botnet had tracked them down through a bunch of different vectors and so on. And in 2010, Canadian researchers at InfoWar Monitor published a paper about the koobface botnet. However, they kept the identities that they had learned about the attackers out of their published material.
Really?
And instead gave them to Canadian law enforcement.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because they weren't covering their tracks very well. Right? So the idea being, well, we won't alert them to the fact that we know who they are now, and we'll just talk about the malware itself.
Oh, koobface is Facebook backwards. That's where they got the name from. That's what it is. I'm looking in this report. By the way, like often when possible, Alan has a link to the actual security researchers report, which is just a goldmine for learning this stuff, and also a great place to learn how to phrase things the way pros phrase them, so that way when you write your reports, they look great. And yeah, it's koobface is Facebook backwards. That's clever-ish. It's clever-ish. Anyways, continue, sir. I'm sorry.
Call it noob face next time. But Facebook and some researchers they were working with released their findings on the Trojan just recently, a week or two ago. And in that, they included the identities of the attackers, also a list of their social media accounts that they had found, and a bunch of other information about their command and control, and basically all the information they had on these guys. And so within days of that disclosure by Facebook, the attackers shut down their command and control servers and rapidly going around trying to cover up all the evidence and delete everything they could.
Huh.
And now they appear to have gone into hiding, likely to avoid prosecution or extradition. There was a separate news story that didn't make it into the show about some cyber criminals from Russia being extradited to the U.S. to face trial.
Huh.
And so I guess these guys don't want to be the next news story about that.
It's interesting, Alan, this report, after, of course, I had to open my big trap and say, read the report and learn how people state things in the industry so you can copy it. You know how this thing opens, the forwarding paragraph? There's an episode of Star Trek in which Captain Kirk and Spock are confronted by evil doppelgangers, who are identical in every way except their more nefarious, dubious character. That's actually how they start this report. That's the first sentence. Yeah, so go read this to see how the pros do it, kids.
The pros quote Star Trek.
Hey, maybe, man. Right. Maybe I'm doing it right. What do I know?
Exactly.
Because I quote Star Trek all the time.
Oh, yes. That is the right thing to do.
All right, okay. Back on track.
With the shutdown of the CNC servers and the disappearance of the operators, new infections of the koobface botnet have dropped to pretty much zero.
Yeah, sounds like their operations kind of dried up.
Yeah. Now, researchers over at ThreatPost are questioning whether exposing the identities of the operators was the right thing to do, because now they've gone in and covered up, and it makes it a lot harder for the researchers to keep track of them.
Right.
Whereas before, they had, the guys, when you don't know you're being watched, you're not as careful to cover up what you're doing.
Right.
And so it made it much easier to keep tabs on what they were doing.
And also now that these guys are on the run, if they're able to continue to elude authorities, they'll probably eventually at some point refactor and make another kind of similar thing like this, right? So it's sort of a double whammy. Although
they've probably made enough money they could just retire now. Right? Like living in Russia is a little bit cheaper, and then if they made $2 million in 2009, 2010, figure they did a little better in 2010, 2011, and then the second half of 2011. Even though there's 5 of them, that's like $1 million each.
You almost can't blame it from their perspective. They're over in Russia. They're taking advantage of Facebook users, probably most of which are US based, and they're gaming the system, making a bunch of money for themselves, and now they just get to sit comfortably over in Mother Russia.
Yep.
I mean, you gotta ask yourself, if this perfect opportunity was presented to you and you just had to do a few things to make sure it happened, I think a lot of people would have a hard time not doing it, because the victims are essentially faceless in this.
Yep.
To them.
Right. Well, the people whose computers get infected aren't actually harmed that much. It's more the affiliate programs that lost all the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who paid for clicks, and all the clicks were fraudulent and didn't result in sales.
Yeah, that's too bad for them. I mean, you're right. And of course, if the person who was infected had any money taken or anything like that, if they had to spend a bunch of money. Huh.
So in addition to the actual research paper from 2010. Some stuff about whether it was the right thing to do to release their identities and so on, and some additional coverage from Reuters, and all of that is in the show notes.
Yeah, excellent, sir. That's an interesting one, and it kind of makes me take Facebook malware a little more seriously. Not that it's like super harmful, but it is obviously, just like everything else on Facebook, an actual business that you can make money at, and I don't know. For me, Facebook is just some toy social networking site, and I don't even think I'd ever think of it in that way, but people have.
But there's a lot of money in Facebook.
Do you want to talk about this massively popular online retailer that was breached this week?
Yes.
All right. So everybody probably has at least heard of Zappos before. They're the online shoe retailer that a couple of years ago was bought by Amazon, and they're sort of known for their excellent customer service. In fact, I read the book Delivering Happiness from Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos. Great book. And but unfortunately, they sort of had a bad week. In fact, they reported 24 million customer accounts hacked this week, or something like that, right on?
Yes.
What's going on?
So Zappos, which is an online shoe retailer, I didn't know there was that big of a market to buy shoes online.
Well, see, you and I are on the outs. My shoes, like my newest pair of shoes is like 3.5 years old, but I think a lot of people buy shoes.
Well, mine are new, but I go to a shoe store and get fitted for shoes because I have giant feet.
Yeah,
I usually have to try on like 6 different pairs before I find a pair that fits comfortably.
One
and I
of their
do
hooks, one of their they should sponsor in the show now that we're saying this. One of their hooks is like they'll send you multiple sizes, and the ones that don't fit, you get to ship back for free.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah. All right. So what happened?
Anyway, they were compromised. I think it was last week or the week before. So basically, an attacker managed to gain access to their customer database by compromising one of their servers in Kentucky and then island hopping off of that into their internal network.
Man, how often, boy, I am so glad towards the beginning of TechSNAP we explained what island hopping was, because like all of these attacks involve island hopping.
A lot of them do. And right, so in case you didn't watch that episode, what island hopping means is normally you have your internet facing servers and stuff separated from your internal network, right? So that the computers on your internal network or your database servers can't be directly connected to from the internet. So in order to get to this customer database, what they had to do was hack into some web server that had access to that database and then go from that server into the database. Or sometimes even multiple steps, right? From that server, they could go to some computer that has access to both networks, and then from there into the internal network. So from the database, they would have got the customer's name, email address, scrambled password, although it's unclear what they mean by scrambled password, whether that's just like an MD5 or if it was proper cryptographic hashing, or if it was just, I don't know what scrambling exactly.
It's unusually vague. It's not a technical term for password storage.
Again, this article, the information we get is from the company, is usually what they send out to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they purposely don't try to explain what cryptographic hashing is.
Understandable, I guess.
People that buy shoes. To people that buy a lot of shoes.
Yeah, right? Good point, Alan. Good point.
But they also got the billing and shipping addresses for the people, their phone numbers, and the last 4 digits of their credit card number. Now, Zappos stated rather clearly and repeatedly that their secure payment processing servers were not compromised and that all the credit card and transaction data is still secure. So this hopefully means that Zappos takes PCI DSS compliance seriously and has those payment servers isolated even from their internal network. Right? No one that doesn't need access to that has access, so it's a lot harder to island hop into the payment network.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I hope.
And, credit cards are stored encrypted and so on and so on. Again, no details. We just, the fact that it wasn't broken into and the fact that they're big enough and owned by Amazon that they would have to do the highest level of PCI DSS and be audited once a year. So we hope that everything was done properly there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, people, go change your passwords. If you have a Zappos account, go change it.
What Zappos did was reset every customer's password and force that password to be expired. So even the reset one they send you an email requires you to change it the first time you use it.
Mm-hmm. And if you use that password somewhere else, if you used it at another website like Amazon.com or something, change it.
Then stop doing that and watch this video on using LastPass.
Go watch my video. Use LastPass. Be secure.
Yeah. Separate password for every single site.
You see that they're still closed based on this breach. They're still down too. So
their website is up. It's just that they
aren't taking orders or whatever. Because that's
no, I don't know if they're still taking orders, but they've disabled their phone system because they're expecting so many calls they wouldn't be able to answer them.
Haha.
They said, even if 5% of our customers called, that would be like 1 million phone calls. And our phone system just can't handle that. So instead, they shut it down and ask people to email them if they have questions so that they can work through that giant pile of emails.
Ironic when they're so well known for their good phone customer support. Like they're known for people calling them and just chatting.
That they don't want you to wait on hold forever.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've also basically every employee is answering emails now, no matter what their job was.
Oh, wow.
Go over to customer support to answer emails. Again, because they're trying to keep their positive reputation for good customer service.
Sure. Yeah, they're trying.
Yeah. But even without the full credit card data, even just having that last 4 digits and so on, you could do a fairly successful spear phishing attack, right? Like if you send somebody an email saying, hey, we have authorized payments on the credit card ending in 1234, and that's about to expire. Could you please come here and enter your credit card again or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you have the right email address and you have their name, password, phone number, everything. So another one is if you could actually start doing this via the phone, right? People are a lot more trusting of phone calls they get. asking about their credit card
Right.
than
Yeah.
they are of emails.
Yeah.
Right. So you call the person, you have their name, you have their phone number, you have their address. It's like, can I verify that you live, at this address and your credit card ending in blah, 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 blah. We need this information from you. And then they get the rest of the information they need to do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And
of course, because it wouldn't be America without this, they're also being sued. This just came out a couple of hours ago by a woman in Louisville saying that she was harmed after her personal information was leaked by Zappos and its parent company. So they're already getting sued over it. So there you go. You got to feel for them a little bit because, I don't know.
Well, yeah. I don't think that lawsuit would happen in Canada.
Oh, really? No?
Well, we have laws about frivolous lawsuits.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Louisville, sorry. Boy, the chat room hates it when I mispronounce it. And I am a bastard at it, too.
That just sounds like, oh, Amazon has lots of money. Let's sue them.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And yeah, well, this disclosure is kind of a big deal. It's not as bad as a lot of the ones we've seen recently.
It's true. At least the passwords were scrambled.
Yeah, and also they reset them quickly.
Yeah,
but more importantly, the credit card information didn't get out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a big win. You're right about
it was just billing and shipping addresses. Those aren't necessarily that sensitive.
Some people might even have it in their phone, in the phone book or something,
Yeah. But again, would rather this not happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, sir. Anything else on that story?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. Well, why don't we talk? We got an update here, so let's talk a little Stuxnet. Sounds like some new information came out this week from our old buddy Stuxnet. Alan, what do we got?
Right. So researcher Ralph Langer, who is basically an acknowledged expert on Stuxnet, has been researching it for quite a while now, has presented his findings at the S3 conference, which is about SCADA systems, revealing that Stuxnet didn't actually use a vulnerability in SCADA necessarily. Right? They didn't have to research and come up with a vulnerability to break into the software. There was no exploit or 0-day against the SCADA system. So in his presentation, he revealed that the Stuxnet worm, which used many 0-day attacks, mostly to break into the computers to island hop to get into where the SCADA and PLC systems are.
Surprise, surprise.
Didn't actually have a 0-day exploit against the Siemens software itself.
That's a pretty big revelation.
Yeah. So, he spent a lot of time decompiling it, and some other researchers looked at the code and said, well, this doesn't work. So it looks like it was just left over and wasn't used, right? It was just some code that was left in the program. But he says that it actually was referencing specific areas in memory and was targeted specifically in such a way that it only worked if you were running it in the environment of the Iranian nuclear facility. And so he postulates that the design of the Stuxnet worm wasn't actually to destroy the centrifuges, but to undetectably disrupt the process and make production impossible.
Right.
So what it would do, it took advantage of the fact that the PLC, the programmable logic controllers, one of their input and output images were marked as read-write rather than read-only, which is just a design flaw, but it was a decision that Siemens made. They're like, well, maybe we'll need to write to it someday, so let's not make it read-only. But what it allowed Stuxnet to do was to record the results of a successful run of the centrifuge, right? And then the next time it was run, it would disrupt it, give it bad instructions so that the centrifuge wouldn't do what it was supposed to, but write to the output, play back the results of a successful run. So as far as the control system was concerned, the centrifuge had just run a complete process as it was supposed to. But what actually happened isn't what the control system was told was happening.
So they essentially looped it in not a diagnostic mode, but in such a way where it would just always report success.
It's like in the movies where you see them record a couple of seconds of the security camera and feed it back to it. Yeah. Exactly what they did. And that way, the centrifuges would look like they were working, but they weren't working. And so when they went and looked at the produced results out of the centrifuges, like, we can't explain why this isn't what it's supposed to be. The centrifuge is working properly, but the results come out as goo instead of what they want out of it.
How can this not have been? I mean,
it seems like at least one of the people working on this had extensive knowledge of the SCADA systems.
Extensive knowledge, and it's such a specific thing to do.
Whoever wrote it or whatever, whichever government entity went after it, you could easily hire an old engineer from Siemens and say, hey, help us break this.
But I'm almost wondering if people could leave comments. Does anybody think this was like a hacktivist group? Does anybody not think this was some sort of state-sponsored attack? I mean, look at what the goal was, right? It doesn't even matter what exploits they used or what code was in there.
This entire worm and everything in it was specifically designed just to go after this one particular uranium enrichment facility in Iran.
I mean, that just seems like such a specific goal that a hacktivist group wouldn't really be after. It's more of a... And there are a couple... It turns out, Alan, there are a couple of countries that really don't want Iran to have a successful nuclear program. A couple I can think of.
It's all of them. Yeah.
So, I mean, come on. It's just... It's pretty wild. It's pretty outrageous. So Stuxnet just continues to be an interesting beast.
Yes, but basically saying that the researchers didn't even have to come up with some convoluted, complicated exploit for the Siemens software. It's just fundamentally broken.
Nuclear. Sorry. Jeez, the chat room's all over my butt today about pronunciation. It's cold out here, guys. My mouth isn't working. You gotta...
So, Langer used his analysis to criticize both Siemens and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for failing to take the security issues with these SCADA systems more seriously.
Yeah.
And, we've done the same thing, talking about the prison control systems and the water control systems and a bunch of the others. And, the security on these Siemens products is really a joke. And,
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. And people don't take it seriously enough.
No, you're right about that. And such a critical infrastructure thing, too. It boggles the mind that it wouldn't have been. Apparently, the chat room has a drinking game now based on when I mispronounce things, so that's good. It's the middle of the day for most people out there, so I don't really know if I agree with that, but all right. We should say we actually stream this live over at jblive.tv at 1 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays.
Which is 4 p.m. Eastern and 1900 UTC.
And we have a chat room embedded over the jblive.tv page, and if you want to get on there,
2100 UTC.
And okay, they're drinking tea. The drinking game involves tea. That seems appropriate. All right. Any other thoughts on that story?
Nope. That's about it.
Well, keep it up. I love staying on top of the Stuxnet thing. It's been an interesting. We're 41 episodes into it, and we're just getting more and more details. I think this story is one of the biggest revelations we've had in the Stuxnet story, though, for a while. So that's kind of exciting.
Well, it's kind of gone back and forth whether Stuxnet was only after Iran or not.
Right.
Again, this researcher has always maintained that it was, but a lot of other people say, well, some of that doesn't work, and it really has other applications. And we've seen with some of the derivatives or the family of it, like Dooku and so on, that there's more to it. But Stuxnet itself was specifically targeted at this one particular target.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that now that they're saying that they don't believe it used any zero-day vulnerabilities in the Siemens software stack, right? Is that what they were saying? They actually say they don't believe it used zero-day vulnerabilities? That doesn't seem right. But I guess if they had forehand knowledge of if they just had to have that one little read-write access to that one directory, then I guess that's all it takes.
Well, I think it was a memory space, not a directory.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Okay. See, I was thinking they were like storing like log files or something, and then the system was reading the log files, but they were actually...
No, this is like real time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
When the controller is talking to the board, yeah.
That's extremely sophisticated. I mean, to be able to do that and not crash the system, I mean... Wow.
Well, it's just a buffer, but yeah.
But dude, you're writing, come on, right? That's amazing. Also, not that unforeseeable. That is a design flaw in the actual code.
It was just, it's basically these SCADA systems were never designed to be secure.
Wow. All right, well, any other thoughts on that one, Alan?
Nope, that's about it.
Well, why don't we take a break and say holler to the good folks over at GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy.com provides us with the means that we need to provide you with this show. And of course, GoDaddy.com is breaking out a brand new deal. They've got a new code, and if you use this, so it's like, for example, say your favorite domain is taken. I don't know, Alan. Like, say you wanted to buy conspiracybacon.com for a new show that you were working on. And this new show wanted to have its own domain, but somebody already taken conspiracy bacon.com because they're bastards. What you could do then is register a .co, or maybe you want to use a URL shortener or something like that. I know a lot of you out there have different uses for it that I can't even imagine. And if you use the code DOTCO9, you'll get a .co domain for $17.99, which is a pretty good deal. Those .cos are expensive. But of course,
they're normally $30.
Yeah. But we also have your standard straight-up codes for any domain purchase you want to make. You can use our code TechSNAP7 to get a domain for $7.99. That's cheaper, and then you can get it right there. See how they have a big sale button on their website? We can get it to you for cheaper than that. You can also use the code TechSNAP10 to get 10% off any order, or TechSNAP20 to get 20% off 1, 2, or even 3 years of hosting plans. That's pretty sweet. And we also have a few other bonus codes you can use over in the show notes if you check those out. I will say, I don't talk a lot about one of my favorite things about GoDaddy. I have in the past, but I haven't mentioned it for a little while. Their back-end administrative management system is by far my absolute favorite piece of GoDaddy. And it's one of those things, too, where, like, over the years, I had like, a bunch of different accounts, and their systems just have allowed me to very easily and simply merge them all under one account. It was just one simple phone call, and then, oh, click, I can do this, and then that, boom, done. I mean, their tools are extremely powerful.
For our company, we have a lot of domains. And so we can create these profiles for the Whois data. So when we moved the office for our company, the address of our company from one place to another, I didn't have to go and edit 30 domains. I changed the profile, say applied these domains, and zap, the Whois information on all those domains updated.
That is handy and saves you time.
Yes.
And thanks to GoDaddy for supporting TechSNAP. Use those codes. The one that I always stick to is the TechSNAP7, because the $7.99.com. I mean, are you serious?
Yes.
That's like as cheap as it gets. But also TechSNAP10, if you're just doing a bunch of other purchases, is a great one because you get 10% off.
Yes, because I think TechSNAP7 only works for new domains, but TechSNAP10 works for renewals.
Renewals is sweet. And I think there's also, what is it, TechSNAP40. And then if you're doing like a bunch of stuff, you can take $10 off.
If you're spending $40 or more, you get $10 off, which right there is like 25%.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So those are in the show notes and things like that. So thank you, GoDaddy, for supporting TechSNAP. Now, typically, this is where we throw to the feedback, but our roundup is huge. You guys might have heard of a few things going on this week. So yeah, you know what? We're going to cover those in the TechSNAP Roundup. And welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that didn't quite make it into the main section of the show, but we still want to talk about it and maybe even give you some links to follow up on your own, which we'll be doing in this episode because it's a big week and there's lots to cover, right, Alan?
Yep.
Do you want to start off with this opinion piece that showed up in the New York Times on the 4th of 2012? And it actually comes off of some statements that was made by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And it is sort of this question, is the access to the internet, is that a human right? And that's what this opinion piece tackles.
Some countries in Europe, like France and Estonia, have declared that it's a civil right, which is different than a human right.
Okay.
Human rights are self-evident, and it's something that everybody has kind of. Civil rights are more in a legal sense, meaning that you can't be denied things, and it's a legal protection rather than just a fundamental protection.
Sure, okay.
But the UN has been researching whether, internet access is a civil right or a human right or what. And, people have made these statements before. And there's also been a bit of a confusion on the difference between a human right and a civil right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Vinton Cerf, who, if you don't know, is the creator of TCP/IP and basically the internet.
Yeah.
Though not technically the web, but anyway. He came out with an opinion piece in the New York Times saying that internet access is not a human right or a civil right. And he goes on to explain why that's the case. And in this case, the internet isn't the right. If you want to protect the right, you have to look at the final outcome, right? So it's not your right to the internet that needs to be protected. It's your right to freedom of information and free speech that needs to be protected. And the internet is just a tool for that.
Right. Yeah.
And he makes a great analogy. In the 18th and 19th century, if you didn't have a horse, it was very hard to make a living. But it's not, the human right there isn't the right to have a horse. It's the right to make a living. Right? So if they had make having a horse a human right, it's like, I don't know where I would put a horse right now.
But the difference there would be the horse enables you to do a job. The internet, the information on the internet enables you to make the appropriate decisions about political processes that can affect your country.
The human right there is your right to that information.
Right.
not your right to the internet.
Right. Yes.
The internet
Right.
is
It is
just the tool. It's just the access method.
Right.
In the future, it may be different, right? Like just like how in the 18th century, it might have been a good idea for civil rights to say everybody gets a horse, but now that would be quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
And again, the right is you have the right to make a living, not the right to have a horse.
Now, Hillary Clinton kind of made the opposite argument. She has a video clip that we'll include in the show notes. It's like 30 minutes long, so we decided not to play it in the show. But if you do want to see her take on it and why she thinks the access to the internet is a human right, you can watch that. But I kind of agree with you, Alan.
Yeah.
It kind of does. It is kind of like you can kind of just equate it to...
Well, just because human rights are things that should apply at all times, forever, right? And so it shouldn't be about any particular piece of technology. Because again, it's not the internet that you should value. It's what the internet lets you access, right? The internet by itself is just a bunch of connections. And
because you could almost make the same argument about public access television or something like that.
Right. Or the telephone system. Again, access to the telephone isn't a civil right. Although with things like universal access, the government is mandated to try to get it to everyone. But it's not a civil right, and it shouldn't be, right?
Right.
The ability to call whoever you want is a civil right or a human right, but how you do that isn't protected.
Yeah. Interesting article, and it's a thinker too. That's what's It's almost I mean the internet with mobile devices, and it is more ubiquitous now. You have people who would never even really have access to a library because they would either just choose not to or whatever, now have cell phones in their pockets, which can get them Wikipedia and things like that. So the level of information now that just everyone has is it's so much more accessible now that I kind of almost think of it as a right, but I do agree with you. I do agree. It hurts me a little bit, but I agree.
But you should read the piece, and then I think once you do, you'll understand it better and probably agree that, again, while you should have access to the internet, it's not a human right. Just because of human rights are such the bar for what is a human right is so high that the internet can't do it, and it shouldn't. You should have access to the information even if it's not on the internet.
The internet is awesome, but it is not yet a human right. So, all right. Now, do you want to talk about this Japanese space agency story that kind of made me smirk? It almost seems like a great story for SciByte, but I'll put on my SciByte hat here and I'll cover it. The agency has said that a virus infection was detected on employees' terminal January 6th. They're being really secretive, though, about what it is. They're calling it an anomaly. And the first one was actually found in last August, when then they launched a further examination, which then, I don't know why it took them from August till January to find another infected computer, but they did. No information on the origin or of the nature of the malware has been released. However, the Japanese Space Agency has released an official apology. So, very Japanese of them.
Yes.
We're sorry. But, we won't tell you what it was.
There are a number of other countries in the world that are really trying to get into space. And, Japanese are considered kind of a leader in technology. And so they would definitely be a target for that kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, that's, it's a link in the show notes if you guys want to read that. And we might actually cover a little more on SciByte if stuff progresses. Another hack disrupted a different organization, an airline. Alan, you want to take this one?
Yes. So in Israel, the websites of the airline, El Al, and the stock market were targeted in a cyber attack by a group claiming to be from Saudi Arabia.
There you go.
So it's just an escalating cyber war that's going on there.
Seriously.
Mostly between almost, a lot of the attacks are coming from private citizens that may or may not have some backing from the government. But again, it's politically motivated, even if they're just hacktivists.
Sure.
And then, Israel it takes cybersecurity fairly seriously and has their own cyber warfare units, which apparently are right up in there.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to talk about, you want to go on to the next one? I got it.
Yep.
I got it. Now, just an update. It was like 2 weeks ago or something. We covered that bug that was in OCZ drives and in some crucial drives. And it was whichever drives use a special SandForce controller. There was like a 5,200 hour bug that would cause some corruption issues. Crucial has released a patch, so just an update for you guys if some of you were freaked out, because like Alan and I mentioned, we both have a couple of SSD drives that were affected by this. There's already firmware updates starting to trickle out. Crucial, I believe, is the first one. Link in the show notes if you want to go get that. They're just now disseminating the information. Probably not a bad idea, because if you plan to use your SSD for more than like 5,200 hours or 50, it was some sort of not inconceivable amount of hours. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's actually the rollover time of smart data, but maybe not. It seemed about that.
Yeah. All right. This is an interesting one that you slapped here in the roundup. Teens are now sharing passwords as a form of intimacy.
Yes. So researchers did some polls of basically high school students and found that a lot of them share access to their email or their Facebook or whatever. And I've seen this before, and I always thought it was ridiculous. It's like you let your friend or your boyfriend or something have access to your Facebook?
Yeah.
Are you ridiculous? That makes no sense.
Well,
it's like on top of the astronomical potential for like trolling and posting and making you look silly and so on. Your email is basically the key to everything. Right?
I love
if you share your email with somebody but not your Facebook, they can reset your Facebook password and get it from your email and then take over every account you have.
That's crazy. But honestly, I don't think it's limited to teenagers. I have adult friends that are husband and wife, and they share their Facebook accounts and they share their Gmail logins, and you email them and you don't know which one you're getting the response back from. Or like when they leave comments on Facebook, you don't know which one it is, even though they're posting under one of each other's accounts. It's weird to me. And as both my wife and I are more tech savvy, we find it like repulsively strange. But to them, it's completely normal. And it's just not good. It's not a good idea. Even if you trust the person, it's one more place. It's one more thing. Somebody could write down the password. Somebody could use it at a machine that has a keylogger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one more way for your password to get out.
Yeah. And it's bad.
Use LastPass, people.
Don't share your passwords with anyone ever.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Just, even for other stuff, it's like wherever possible, you should have separate accounts for stuff just for audit reasons. Like, especially with a business, like my business partner and I do have to share some stuff, but even with like our PayPal account, they offer multiple logins, and we set up the separate logins so that when a transaction takes place, we know which one of us did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with financial stuff.
Yeah.
The next story in the roundup, I'm wondering if you know much about. There's a controversy brewing over a new term called thick whois. Are you familiar with this?
I've read the story and I understand the concept now.
Right. Okay. So I'll just for a highlight. I don't think we'll cover much of it in this episode because it's still pretty early developing. But thick whois is going to be a sort of more complete version of the current whois database. Currently, only
it's just centralized. All right. So, like, if you look at registries like .ca or .uk or most of the other TLDs other than .com, .net, .info, and so on, that are run by the country-specific or sponsored TLDs, those ones, for example, .ca, there's the CIRA organization that runs .ca. They run the one single whois database, and they have everybody's information. And when you whois, you go to that server and you get the information.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, it's not great now. No, it's not great. Thick whois thick whois though is sort of a replacement for that.
Well, no, that's thick whois.
No, I'm saying that but they're gonna. So the current system that's in place now for .coms and that kind of stuff is going to be replaced with thick whois.
Right, because .coms are different. When you do a whois on a .com, you go to VeriSign and they give you a referral to somewhere like GoDaddy or Namecheap or whatever, and they have the information.
Right. So this will be a one centralized, so you can find out who the owner is of a site, who the operator is, so in that regard, it's a good thing because it's going to be more managed, it's going to be more complete.
Not necessarily. Like mostly there's nothing wrong with the distributed database. Of course there are problems like there are some that are down and some where they like refuse to answer old-fashioned whois queries or like go to our website. And so I can understand the compulsion to do this thick whois where VeriSign will store all the data for all the customers. Although some people have legitimate fears. For example, in some countries, the privacy laws. I choose a .com registrar that's in my country, so they have to protect my information under the privacy laws in my country. But if all the data is stored at VeriSign, then I don't have my Canadian privacy protection laws anymore because the data is stored in the US.
Right. And what concerns me, so far I'm totally in sync with you, and I agree that that is definitely a disadvantage. The other thing is you kind of have to look at the origination of it. Now, this is a quote from this is what really bothers me. This comes from ICANN's intellectual property consultancy group, and they say here's a big. Oh, go ahead.
Those are the people that want to take websites down because they contain
Yes.
copyright infringement.
And here's what they have to say.
They have a bunch of different constituencies in there, and we'll talk about those in a sec.
Simplifying access to this information through Thick Whois will help prevent abuse of intellectual property and will protect the public in many ways, including by reducing the level of consumer confusion and consumer fraud in the internet marketplace. Thick Whois enables a quicker response and resolution when domain names are used for illegal, fraudulent, or malicious purposes.
Right. So what they're saying is basically it's bullcrap because you can look up any domain wherever it is now. You don't have to have a one central database for it. However, there's been talk at ICANN about doing like the .xxx domain has, where you have to verify your identity before you register a .com name.
Mm-hmm. And you know, with the new arbitrary top-level domains, it can be anything you want, like .awesome. Those are requiring that level of verification.
Well, I think it requires that level of verification for the sponsor that's running the registry. I don't know if it's going to do it for every user. I think that would be up to whoever operates that TLD.
So the biggest argument I've seen against this is if I want to set up like an anti-government protest website or something like that, now there's a pretty good way I could register it and not really be traceable. It's like I don't have to point it back to my information.
For example, GoDaddy sells private registration,
which I buy.
Yes. Now, if you're trying to buy this private registration from GoDaddy, but GoDaddy has to send the information to VeriSign, then how does that keep working?
Right. It's something where I think both of us are kind of like this.
To me, it seems more like the current system is not that broken.
Yeah, I agree
some
with you there.
Stricter rules from ICANN about availability of the Whois information, making sure it's not down or whatever. And that's about all it needs to be.
It smacks of intellectual property rights holders.
It seems like it's the first step. They have to switch to Thick Whois, where VeriSign contains one database of all the information before they can move to the step where you have to verify your identity before you can register a domain.
So you're saying it's the first step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a bad idea.
That's kind of why I wanted to put in the roundup, because both of us, I think, are getting inclinations that it looks like they're setting up to eventually replace, step one is get it in place. Step two is replace the existing system. And I do have concerns with that. And, I also, though, agree that in some ways we need to cede some ground on some of this stuff on the internet because, it is sort of there needs to be some sort of compromise.
I don't think the ownership of .com name should require you to fax a bunch of government documents.
Right. I agree. It should be something that, all right.
It's it takes 45 seconds to register a domain name, and that's too long.
So read the article if you folks are interested in this. Let us know if it's something you want us to start following closely and become really familiar with. We can do it. Yep. Right now, I just put it on there because I wanted to officially drop it on the TechSNAP radar, so it's something we just kind of follow as we see it. But there it stands now. All right. Well, this was the big protest week. Of course, lots of websites went down in protest over SOPA and PIPA. Jupiter Broadcasting put up a landing page that gave you information about both SOPA and PIPA, and then also information on how to contact your local representative. What do you think, Alan? Any impressions now? We're one day after the big blackout. Do you think it was effective?
I think it definitely got the message out to a lot of people that might not have paid attention before.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like everybody uses Wikipedia, and they saw, even like the Google homepage, having it on there and the Firefox default page and stuff. I think that definitely put some got the message in front of a lot of people that hadn't paid attention to it before.
And it seems like it got the attention of some U.S. senators. Of course, PIPA is the bill that was working its way through the Senate. And Ars Technica, this number may not be totally current, but saying the tally is up to 19 senators who have polled support of PIPA. Now, this is different than SOPA. This was a whole different bill. So that's awesome. And of course, SOPA.
In the chat room, I pasted a link. I'll throw it in the show notes too, to an article from time.com that's saying the number was closer to 35 that are in opposition.
Awesome.
Although another ProPublica.org has this running tally, and they're showing the number as 37 in favor, 22 opposed, 6 leaning towards no, and 35 that haven't clearly stated a position.
So 37 was the number I heard last, but wasn't able to. I wasn't able to find a.
No, sorry, that's 37 that support. The one from time.com says 35 oppose it,
and 35 are unknown.
Yeah, different numbers from different times.
It's still not. That's still closer than I'd like to see it at 37.
Yeah, 37 that are for it is a bad number.
Yeah, that is. And we'll see. So, overall, I think the one thing that I'm the most impressed by is I don't think we've ever really witnessed the internet sort of universally across the entire world align to one side of a political topic with so much, enthusiasm. I mean, normally the internet is so busy firing flame wars at each other over topics that we never really pull anything off. Now, the problem is
in this case is because you're endangering the entire internet.
Oh yeah. Now the problem is the battle may have been won temporarily, but it seems the war was still raging on. Today, there's
even just before this, right? We saw that they were talking about shelving the bill, and it's like, yeah, but they're planning to bring it back in February or March.
Yeah,
right. They're just going to let the publicity die down, let people think that they've stopped it, and then sneak it through anyway.
And I think what they're going to do is they'll take out the DNS stuff because the Obama administration came out against that the DNS stuff specifically. Mm-hmm. And I think that is ground that they'd be willing to cede anyways. And they'll just reintroduce it with all the other stuff that still sucks.
Yeah, and it still breaks the entire internet. It's just, yeah. Even the White House said that, they need some law to do it. And it's like, well, not really. You need to fix your broken laws, not make new ones that don't make any sense.
And that's actually one of the elements about SOPA and PIPA that I don't think gets enough attention, is that they are more about modifying enforcement and giving them a bigger stick, and they're not really about stopping piracy.
Right.
And they still haven't come out and quantified really what the economic harm is in piracy. Because, the access to pirated content has not made me buy less DVDs, has not made me go see less movies. You know why I've slowed down on those things? Is because I don't like these companies. I mean, these website blackouts are absolutely an approach that does send a message, but what would really send a message is to boycott the media companies that are trying to ram this legislation through. Talking to our Congress people and our senators, that's like talking to your local McDonald's employee about the quality of the hamburger. You know what I'm saying, people? These representatives are bought and paid for. They are the lackeys of these companies. If you want this stuff to change for good, you gotta boycott those people. Stop going to the movies. Stop buying music. Stop watching TV. I know that sucks because I know it's super distracting and that's awesome. But the only way to kill it is to kill the beast. You gotta boycott their stuff. I mean, if people stop watching, the whole thing blows my mind that we'd be willing to fundamentally alter the way that humans can connect and share information over crappy content. I mean, this stuff generally sucks. You get 2 good movies a year and 2 good CD albums a year, and that's about it anyways. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's just boycott the media companies, and then problem solved, eventually.
Yep.
That is what my take is on it.
And also, I hear lots of people saying, well, I just won't vote for that senator next time. It's like, yeah, but just your vote isn't going to bother them. You have to convince the people that don't use the internet that they also need to change their vote.
Have you seen what the stats are on like senators and Congress people getting reelected? I mean, they can basically kill babies in public and they get reelected. It is so crazy. Unless they play footsie with some other dude in a bathroom stall, they almost never get kicked out. And that is legitimately the way it works.
It's because people don't pay attention and they're like, oh, politics, I don't want to follow that.
Am I wrong, though? Am I wrong in the fact that we're willing to do all the suffering over these people's intellectual property that's not very good to begin with? Maybe because I'm like a new media dude that's doing stuff online, I just don't see it anymore. I don't see the value in it. It's just, let's boycott them directly, solve the problem in the long term. Otherwise, in just a few months or by the end of this year, you're going to have legislation come through that is just as bad.
And if you think because you live in some other country you're safe, you're not. The U.S. government is using every tactic it can to pressure other countries to adopt similar legislation. Right? We've seen this in Spain, in Canada, in New Zealand, all kinds of places.
Now, although mad props to Google, I thought their little SOPA banner that they did over their logo was effective. They also, when you clicked on it, sent people to an awesome infograph. And Google today is reporting that 4.5 million people signed the anti-SOPA petition. I hope that all of this energy around SOPA, which is now kind of a dead duck, or at least a lame duck bill, I hope that also applies to the Protect IP stuff and all of that. We'll see. We'll see. Protect IP is not dead yet.
Well, after yesterday's protest, it's interesting to see what happened. What's really going to matter is where we are a month from now. After after the mainstream media stops covering everything we're doing, right? Because having Wikipedia and Google covering this caused, some major news outlets talked about it for
not
2
a lot.
minutes.
Not very well. Fox Business News brought on one of the co-founders of Reddit, and basically asked him, why do you want to support pirates? This is just a good old fashioned piracy bill. This is just trying to stop piracy. Well, of course, Fox Business News is owned by Rupert Murdoch, who's been publicly
likes to Twitter about how awesome SOPA is.
He's been publicly blasting Google and
yeah,
it's just the world we live in, man, is just absolutely insane.
Well, it's like if you look at why Google is against it. Google's not against it because they're for pirates. They're against it because the legislation would ask them to manually filter every single post to YouTube ever.
Maybe you and I ought
like thousands of those per second.
You and I ought to start the TechSNAP consulting group and contact the U.S. Senate, because the U.S. Senate's website was hit with technical difficulties during the SOPA blackout because so many people were redirecting over to the different websites to get like senator contact information and congressperson contact information, that their websites were going down when you click on the contact. People don't think it was actual like any screwing around.
It wasn't an attack or anything. It was just literally a lot of traffic.
Good. I say good on them.
It's a shame that a lot of those people that didn't manage to get the information won't follow up and get it today when the websites are back up.
All right, so we've got a couple of interesting links left in the roundup. So let's get to those, because this story is breaking just before we went on the air with TechSNAP, and it's coming from the AP, and it looks like the file sharing website Megaupload has been shut down.
Yes, not just shut down, but 4 members of its
executive
board have been arrested in New Zealand.
Yeah, including somebody named Kim.com. That's an awesome last name.
they legally changed their last name from something more generic.
Yeah.
But Megaupload was a file sharing website, kind of like RapidShare and others. RapidShare, notably, hosted in Germany and won a court case in Germany saying that they can't be held responsible for what other people upload. But Megaupload also recently in the news, we talked about how they gave the tools to Universal Studios to pull down movie and music content that was uploaded illegally. And Universal went and used that tool to pull down anything that had like any keywords in it that had anything to do with any movie they had ever had ever.
Yeah, like they do on YouTube.
And they were pulling down a lot of stuff that wasn't their content. And
interesting side note, I released on Tuesday a Star Trek Online went free to play, and I launched sort of like a special coverage of the free to play launch day. I put a video out, and I had music in there because it was from the live stream, and I knew I was rolling the dice when I did that. Not a lot of not more than 30 seconds of any particular song, I wouldn't say, except for maybe a couple. And I got a really nasty email from YouTube, and they're saying they're reviewing the video and they might pull it down. And if I had submitted it for revenue sharing, they would have deleted it immediately from YouTube. It's just ridiculous.
Yep.
So Megaupload is, and you know what's crazy about Megaupload is they had endorsements from Kim Kardashian, Alicia Keys, Kanye West, and others on the front page of their site.
And the CEO of the company was a musician and married to Alicia Keys, I think it says there.
And they were in New Zealand. They were
based in Hong Kong and New Zealand. And
they were arrested based on the request of the U.S. in New Zealand. I mean, wow, right?
But also, copyright infringement is a civil crime, not a criminal offense, usually.
It's apparently a worldwide crime that involves tracking people down all over the globe and arresting them.
Yeah, but arresting them, normally it's there's they sue you and they get money, but to actually have people arrested over it is another thing.
Now, can you remind me why we need SOPA and PIPA when we can obviously already do what they need done? And I'll remind you, it wasn't too long ago, we just saw a whole swath of websites pulling down, too.
Right. Well, in this case, it was in New Zealand, a country that was friendly to the U.S. demanding they arrest people. But some other countries aren't. For example, Germany didn't let the case, they said it must be tried in Germany, and the German court found that the website wasn't at fault for what other people upload. And so the U.S. had no way to force the website to be shut down. And so under SOPA or PIPA, they would just say, all right, nobody in the U.S. can go to that website anymore.
Interesting enough.
Since the local laws won't, because it's not illegal in that country, the U.S. wants to block it from their side.
Gosh.
And The other thing is, so Megaupload had tried to work with the movie studios, but the movie studios cheated and abused their powers and deleted stuff that was perfectly legitimate.
And I'll remind you.
And then Universal went to YouTube and had videos Megaupload had posted, which contained no copyright infringing material, had them pulled.
Like Tech News Today that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Well, they pulled down a video made by Megaupload. It was basically a little promotion thing, and it had no copyrighted content in it at all. Then This Week in Tech, another podcast, posted an episode where they showed a clip from that video, and Universal had that pulled down.
Yeah.
So they had a legitimate podcast pulled off YouTube for airing a clip that wasn't owned by Universal and wasn't copyright infringing Universal, but Universal had claimed copyright over and had the original and anybody that showed part of it pulled off YouTube.
And can they prove that to me, I always use this as an example, and this is just, a one case example, but I never in my lifetime bought a music CD until I got Napster. And I started downloading an S ton of music and realized, I like music. I like this artist. I'll go buy their CD. They've never been asked to shown that having a clip of something on YouTube or having a clip of something on Megaupload actually costs them money. Because I believe very likely could be free promotion.
That's why there are so many music videos posted legitimately on YouTube.
Exactly.
Right?
It makes them money.
There are a couple of services that license the videos and put them on YouTube specifically because A, they make money off the advertising on YouTube, and B, it sells more music.
Now, the co-founder of Reddit said this when he was on Fox Business News, and I haven't verified the stat, but what he said is that 3/4 of the way that the recording industry and motion picture industry make money today is on systems and methods that they once proclaimed would destroy their business, like digital distribution and things like that. They claimed would ruin their business, or DVDs, remember, and VHS. They claimed VHS would ruin their business. Yep. And now look, that's how they make the most of their money. Like when they have a movie that bombs in the box office, they make it up on the DVD sales and the VHS sales. It's just...
Same on TV shows, right? How many TV shows have had great DVD sales?
Or actually, there was a TV show that was going to be canceled, had such terrific iTunes sales that they brought it back, and it's still on the air today. It's like a really well-known...
Family Guy was canceled by Fox, and then they had such great DVD sales, they brought it back. And Futurama, same thing.
So it's pretty crazy. Now, things that are also registering as crazy to me in this day and world is when you have security companies out there that are responsible for keeping thousands and thousands of business machines and personal machines safe. When they get hacked, how do they announce and confirm it to the world? On their Facebook page. That's what Symantec did. We actually talked about this last week, that it looked like Symantec had been hacked and some of their source code had been stolen.
Well, because some of the information from that hack was used to say that India had some agreement with Apple and RIM and so on to spy on their citizens.
Right.
But basically, Symantec released a statement saying that some source code from a 4 or 5-year-old version of one of their products was leaked, and that they don't think it compromises the current version of the product.
No. And also,
they're saying we don't think that the code that they got would allow them to make some kind of virus that would defeat or not be detected by a current version of our antivirus software.
Yep. It's of course, I know people that are still running the 2006 version of Symantec antivirus, because a lot of people buy that stuff.
Having the source code doesn't necessarily give you anything about it, and it was only part of the source code and so on.
There's one last story that the chat room is dropping in here that I haven't gotten a chance to read yet, so maybe we'll toss a link in the show notes. It's coming from RT.com, Russia Today. That's why I want to verify it before we really talk about it much. But apparently Anonymous is attacking the whitehouse.gov after taking down the Department of Justice and others. This is literally just broke while we're recording the show, so I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But that might be something we talk about next week if that develops into much. Well, there you go, Alan. We only had one power outage, and it happened during the break, so pretty good. Now, of course, the power has to hold together while I edit and release, so we'll see if that happens. But for those of you that aren't watching live, between the main news section and the roundup, we were screwing around on the live stream, and all my power just dropped for a second, except for the machine Alan was Skyped into. So everything turned off.
I was sending power from this end.
Yeah, everything turned off except for this machine, and I looked over. Did you see the lights turn off and everything in here? Were you looking at your screen?
I didn't have your window up because I was reading stuff for the roundup.
Yeah. Literally, I'm sitting here and all the lights went out, and I'm like, why isn't it pitch black in here? I look over and the monitor's on still, and then all the lights popped on and the stream came back. But we made it. So here we are. We're at the end of this week's TechSNAP. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think that's this is going to be a pretty long episode, even with the
big break we had. Yeah.
Big break there.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we still want to get your questions, and we'll answer them in an upcoming episode. So email those in, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Also, I feel negligent. I haven't told you about our awesome subreddit. Go over to TechSNAP, or actually it's links.techsnap.tv or techsnap.reddit.com. And there you can vote up stories that you like or submit links to the show or even submit questions that way and then see if other people can throw in a few comments, which might be a great way to get questions answered even if they don't make it onto the show. And again, that's links.techsnap.tv. And thank you to everyone who submits to our Reddit. It helps us fill out the roundup, see what shows or what kind of stories you guys like covered, and oftentimes we promote those to main stories in the show as well. So,
yep. And also stay tuned this Sunday for a 3-man Last episode.
That's right. FreeBSD 9 review coming up on Last.
Yes.
And while we're mentioning it, the faux show, we Jupiter Broadcasting canceled production for Wednesday in observation of the SOPA protest. So we moved faux show to Friday night, and I think we're going to do like a massive SOPA coverage. So if you go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/faux show, you can catch that episode or join us live at 8 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv on Friday evening. And we're going to do like a roundup of what all the different sites did for their SOPA protest with a different homepage. We got a bunch of screenshots we took, and we're going to cover all that stuff. So check that out as well. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.